Evil beings born from humanity's greed and division escape into the world, spreading a curse that turns nearly everyone into stone. With civilization on the verge of extinction, a fearless young warrior sets out to locate a legendary dragon who vanished centuries ago, the only hope left for mankind. Today, we're recapping the 2021 animated film, Raya and the Last Dragon. 5 centuries before Raya's journey begins, the world was thriving. The land was rich, the rivers were full, and people lived as one across Commandra, a region formed by 5 realms that together resemble the shape of a dragon. Humans weren't alone in this golden age. Dragons existed alongside them, mystical guardians who brought rain, water, and balance wherever they went. But peace didn't last. A terrifying force called the Tran appeared, an unstoppable plague that spread fast, multiplying as it devoured everything in its path. Any living being touched by it instantly turned to stone. Humans were powerless, and even the dragons eventually joined the battle to protect them. One by one, the dragons gave everything they had, until they, too, were consumed and petrified. In the final moments of the war, Sisu, the last remaining dragon, gathered every last drop of her magic into a single glowing gem. With that artifact, the Tran were driven away, and everyone who had been turned to stone returned to life. Everyone except the dragons. When the dust cleared, the only trace of Sisu's sacrifice was the jewel itself. That miracle should have brought humanity closer than ever, but instead it did the opposite. Rather than uniting in gratitude, the 5 realms turned suspicious and hungry for power. Each kingdom wanted control over the dragon gem, believing it would guarantee wealth and safety. Trust collapsed. Borders were drawn. Commandra split into enemies. And to prevent more chaos, the gem was hidden away. Fast forward 500 years, and the world is on the edge again. We meet Raya, a skilled young fighter from the Heart Realm. Her father, Chief Benja, trains her for one purpose: to become the next protector of the dragon gem. To prove she's ready, she must complete a trial inside a guarded mountain sanctuary, dodging traps, surviving the cave's defenses, and reaching the sacred chamber at the peak. With help from Tuk Tuk, her loyal armadillo-like companion, Raya moves through the tunnels carefully, slipping past danger and finally arriving at the sealed gate. She enters, only to notice something strange. The test feels almost too easy. That's when Benja reveals himself, blocking her path. He warns her that the final step is the true challenge. Raya accepts without hesitation, treating it like a duel. The two clash, Benja with his sword, Raya with her bamboo staff weapons, each testing the other's speed and skill. Eventually, Benja disarms her and declares the trial over. But Raya smirks. In the exchange, she managed to place her foot inside the dragon gem circle, meaning she technically completed the task. Benja pauses, then smiles with pride. Raya has passed. She will inherit the duty of guarding the gem and continue her family's legacy. Later, Benja drops surprising news. Leaders from the other 4 realms are on their way to Heart. Raya immediately assumes the worst and starts planning how to outsmart them. But Benja explains that he invited them personally. He's preparing a celebration, not a trap. Raya can't understand it. These kingdoms have been rivals for generations. Benja believes the real enemy isn't any one realm. It's the lack of trust between them. He explains that the other kingdoms aren't evil, just desperate. They've convinced themselves their future depends on dragon magic, when the truth is their downfall comes from division. Benja's dream is bold. Rebuild Commandra by bringing everyone together again. Because if humans keep turning on each other, disaster will return. Soon, the delegations arrive, and tension fills the palace. Accusations fly almost instantly. The visiting leaders suspect Benja is hiding something, especially the dragon gem, and they question why they were truly invited. Benja tries to keep the peace, but the room only grows louder and more hostile. To break the pressure, Raya steps in and shifts the mood with a simple question: who's hungry? The moment eases the room just enough for the feast to begin. During the gathering, Raya catches the attention of Namari, the daughter of the Fang realm's leader. The two quickly find unexpected common ground. They're both obsessed with dragon legends. As they talk, Raya admits she's always admired Sisu most of all. Namari, surprisingly, responds with something even more shocking. Rumors in Fang claim Sisu might not be gone. She even shows Raya an old record describing what happened after the Tran were defeated. Sisu fell into the water and was carried away by the current. According to the legend, she didn't die. She's sleeping somewhere deep within a river, waiting to be found. Raya can barely contain her excitement. If Sisu is real and alive, then maybe there's still a way to reunite people. In a moment that feels sincere, Namari offers Raya a gift, her dragon-shaped necklace, given as a token of friendship. Believing they formed a real bond, Raya makes a huge decision. She takes Namari up the mountain to reveal the dragon gem, and it turns out to be the worst mistake Raya could have made. The second Namari lays eyes on the gem, her expression changes. Friendship disappears, replaced by ambition. She shoves Raya aside and reaches for the artifact, determined to take it for Fang. Raya scrambles up and stands her ground, swearing she won't allow the gem to be stolen. But Namari is prepared. Realizing Raya won't back down, she fires a signal flare to summon her forces. Soldiers arrive within minutes. Benja rushes in soon after and manages to fight them off at first, until warriors from other realms also show up, drawn into the chaos. The room erupts again, with everyone shouting, accusing, and reaching for the same prize. And as the conflict spirals out of control, the real danger begins to return. Benja tries one last time to cool everyone down. He speaks from the heart, urging the leaders to stop chasing power and start rebuilding trust, because without unity, the whole world is doomed to repeat history. But before his words can sink in, everything goes wrong. A sudden attack hits the Heart Chief. An arrow slams into his leg. The moment the others see Benja hurt, panic and greed take over. The visiting groups rush toward the dragon gem, each trying to claim it first. In the struggle, the unthinkable happens. The gem slips, hits the ground, and shatters. Instantly, the mountain chamber begins to break apart. The floor splits, stone walls tremble, and the cave starts collapsing around them. Then a shadowy creature emerges, one of the Tran. It strikes a warrior, and in seconds he becomes stone. Worse, the Tran don't come alone. They multiply fast, spreading through the chaos like smoke made of hunger. Benja grabs a broken piece of the dragon gem and uses it against them, realizing the magic still works. The Druans recoil when the shard is raised, giving everyone just enough time to escape. But instead of helping each other, the realms fall into old habits. Each kingdom snatches a shard and runs, leaving the world fractured again. As Raya escapes with her father, she notices something important. The Tran won't cross water. Even splashes and rain force them back. They reach the bridge, but the swarm keeps growing stronger, closing in from every side. Benja looks at his injured leg and understands the truth. He won't make it. So he does the only thing he can. He presses their shard into Raya's hands, then pushes his daughter into the river below, forcing her to survive. As Raya falls, she looks back just in time to see her father surrounded and then turn to stone. 6 years pass. Raya doesn't stop moving, not for a day. She's still chasing the same goal: find Sisu, bring the shards together, and undo the disaster that took her father and nearly ended humanity. Now she's in the Tail Realm, crossing a vast desert with Tuk Tuk, who's grown into a huge, tough, rolling beast. Around them is nothing but sand, ruins, and stone statues scattered like warnings from the past. After a brutal trek, they finally reach the last remaining river in the region, the final place Raya hasn't searched. She's already checked every other waterway and found nothing. This is her last chance. Before she can even rest, a Tran attacks. Raya fights it off using her dragon gem shard, forcing the creature to retreat. Then she heads into the wreck of an old ship and performs a summoning ritual, hoping it's enough to reach the legendary dragon. That's when something strange happens. Tuk-Tuk drinks from the river, and the water begins to rise, floating unnaturally. Bubbles gather like they're being pulled by invisible strings until they form into a shape. And then Sisu appears. Raya is stunned. The last dragon is real, alive. But Sisu is nothing like Raya imagined. Instead of a majestic, intimidating guardian, she's awkward, goofy, and surprisingly innocent, like someone who's been alone for far too long. Sisu is excited at first, believing her sacrifice worked and the world has been restored. Raya quickly crushes that hope. She admits the truth. The dragon gem was broken, and the Druin have returned. Raya even blames herself for setting the chaos in motion. She begs Sisu to create a new gem, but Sisu explains she didn't invent the magic. She only focused what already existed. Still, when Sisu touches Raya's shard, she glows. She recognizes it as the gift of one of her siblings. Each dragon carried a unique power, and the shard Raya holds contains the ability of Sisu's younger sister, while Sisu herself is tied to water. That gives Raya an idea. If Sisu can still channel the gem's magic through its fragments, then the answer is simple. They have to gather every shard. Meanwhile, Namari hasn't forgotten. She and her group are still hunting Raya. They spot evidence in the sand. Something dropped, something familiar, and realize Raya was nearby. Mounted on their massive feline beasts, they sweep toward the wrecked ship, searching for the thief who stole the dragon scroll. But Raya is already gone. Their first destination is clear. Retrieve the shard taken by Tail on the day the gem broke. Raya and Sisu head into a trap-filled cave. The place is packed with ropes, pressure points, and strange glowing insects. Raya warns Sisu about them, creatures known for exploding on contact. Sisu learns why pretty quickly. One detonates, startling her so badly she nearly trips into worse danger. Deeper inside, they find an entire passageway crawling with the same volatile bugs, forcing them to move slowly, step by step. After surviving the gauntlet, they finally locate the shard, wrapped in the roots of a tree, beside the remains of Tail's long-dead leader. The prize is clearly booby-trapped. To reach it, Raya uses her extendable sword to latch onto the ceiling and swing across sharp rocks with Sisu. When they get close, Raya realizes the skeleton's arms are positioned to trigger the trap if disturbed. So she uses a stick to hold the arms in place while she carefully pulls the shard free. It works. Now, they have two pieces. When Sisu absorbs the new shard's power, something unexpected happens. She transforms into a human. This shard carries the ability of another dragon's sibling, shape-shifting. Before Raya can celebrate, Namari shows up with her squad. She's shocked to see Raya with a new companion, and even more stunned when she realizes that companion is linked to dragon magic. She demands to know what Raya is doing, why she's collecting shards, and what her real plan is. Raya lies, claiming she's only after power. To buy herself time, Raya returns the stolen dragon scroll, knowing it's the reason Namari has been chasing her. But Namari doesn't back down. She orders her soldiers to seize Raya anyway. So Raya makes a hard choice. She triggers the trap on purpose, creating chaos and a narrow escape route. Raya and Sisu sprint through the gate as it closes, but Namari pushes forward, nearly catching them. Raya grabs one of the explosive insects to create a distraction, then bolts toward Tuk-Tuk. A chase begins. Raya's next move is clever. She heads straight for the river, because just like the Druin, Namari's giant cats hate water. They leap in and scramble onto a small nearby boat, only to find it already has an owner. A boy is there, calmly offering snacks like this is just another day. His name is Bound, and he runs this boat as a floating restaurant because his entire family has already been turned to stone. With enemies closing in, Raya offers him payment to take them to Talon. Sisu helps, using her water abilities to propel the boat away, creating distance fast. Once they're safe, Sisu wants to swim freely, but Raya insists she stays in human form. If anyone sees a dragon, the whole world will come after them. Elsewhere, Namari rides past stone dragons, silent reminders of what was lost. She bows in respect, then continues her pursuit. That night, dozens of Droon gather near the boat. But the group stays surrounded by water, so the creatures can't reach them. By morning, they arrive in Talon. Raya claims she knows exactly where the next shard is hidden. She tells Sisu to stay behind on the boat for safety, because in Talon, trust is expensive and danger is everywhere. As Raya and Tuk Tuk move through the busy streets of Talon, they don't realize they're being watched. A trio of clever little monkeys spots the outsider immediately, and within seconds, they start plotting. Raya cuts through a shadowy alley to avoid attention, and that's when she notices a baby sitting alone. Thinking the child is lost, she kneels down and gently tries to help him find his parents. But the baby isn't helpless at all. While Raya is distracted, the monkeys approach Tuk Tuk with fruit, keeping the big creature occupied. Raya suddenly feels something's off, and a heartbeat later, she realizes her dragon gem fragments are being lifted. The baby on her lap, Noi, snatches the shard pouch, smacks Raya in the face for good measure, and bolts off with the monkeys. Raya freezes for a second, then groans. She's just been played by a toddler. Elsewhere, Sisu decides it's time to prepare a gift for Deng Hai, the ruler of Talon. Then she remembers an inconvenient detail. She has absolutely no money. Baun, completely unfazed, introduces her to credit. He explains it like it's simple. You take what you want now, and you promise to pay later. Sisu's eyes practically sparkle. She interprets this as unlimited shopping powers and immediately starts grabbing everything she sees: food, trinkets, decorations, you name it. A few minutes later, angry merchants surround her. They demand payment and insist she has no account in Talon. Nobody knows who she is, and nobody is letting her walk away. Just as the situation is about to explode, a kind-looking older woman steps in, calms everyone down, and offers to guide Sisu across town, supposedly to fix the problem. Meanwhile, Raya is in full chase mode. She sprints after Noi and the monkeys through rooftops, alleys, and crowded walkways. With Tuk Tuk's help, she finally corners the little thieves. Realizing they can't escape, the monkeys reluctantly return Raya's belongings. Raya then asks the question that's been bothering her. Where's Noi's family? One of the monkeys points toward the stone-filled city and makes it clear they've already been turned. Noi isn't stealing for fun, she's surviving. Raya's anger fades. She doesn't just forgive them, she offers a deal. If the monkeys help her slip past guards and get into the palace, she'll let them eat as much as they want from Baun's boat. No limits. The monkeys agree instantly. Inside Deng Hai's palace, Raya discovers something grim. Deng Hai has been turned to stone, just like so many others. That means the next shard isn't protected by an army or a vault. It's literally sitting with the petrified ruler. At the same time, Sisu's helpful guide leads her to the palace too. Sisu assumes she's being taken to meet Deng Hai, so she can deliver her gifts. But once the gates open, Sisu realizes the truth. The palace is silent. Everyone is stone, and the sweet old lady isn't sweet at all. A Droon suddenly appears and lunges at Sisu, but the creature is forced back when it gets too close to the shard held by the petrified ruler. The woman sees that, and her tone changes completely. She corners Sisu, demanding to know where the other shards are. Sisu is crushed. She thought humans would be better by now. Instead, she's been tricked again. The woman threatens to have her arrested unless she gives up information. But before she can push further, Raya bursts in with Tuk Tuk. Raya snatches the shard, hands it to Sisu, and they escape barely. When Sisu touches the new fragment, she absorbs another dragon's ability, a mist-like power, letting her create fog and concealment. Back at the boat, the crew regroups, and surprisingly, the mood is almost warm. Baun is serving food like it's a normal dinner service, and Noi and the monkeys are already eating like champions. With another shard secured, the team sets course for their next destination, Spine. In Fang, the stakes are rising. Chief Varana receives troubling news from her general. Their territory is shrinking, space is running out, and they'll need to expand onto the mainland soon. The issue is obvious. Leaving their protected area would expose them directly to Drin attacks. That's when Namari steps forward with an answer. She tells her mother she found Raya and learned Raya is collecting the shattered pieces of the dragon gem. Namari proposes a plan. Mobilize Fang's forces and intercept Raya at Spine before she can recover the next shard. Varana approves. She orders the army prepared and gives Namari command. On the river journey, Sisu grows unusually quiet. She admits being human is harder than she expected. Tiny head, no tail, and, worst of all, people lie just to get what they want. Raya's response is cold. In her eyes, the world is broken, so trust is pointless. But Sisu pushes back. Maybe the world is broken because people stopped trusting each other in the first place. That hits Raya hard. She thinks of her father, someone who believed in trust the way Sisu does and paid the price for it. When the team reaches Spine, Sisu grabs a pot of food bound prepared and runs straight toward the gates, determined to prove Raya wrong about people. Raya chases her, warning her it's a bad idea. Too late. The two are captured almost immediately and tied up inside a cabin owned by a strange, intimidating man. At first, he seems dangerous, but Raya quickly realizes the truth. He's not a villain. He's just alone, desperate for companionship. Before the situation can get worse, Tuk Tuk and the rest of the crew break in. Noise monkeys swarm the cabin, and the big man, Tong, is restrained. Then Bound rushes in with urgent news. Namari and Fang's army have arrived at the gates. Raya hears Namari's voice outside, loud and commanding. Namari demands that Spine hand Raya over. If they refuse, Fang will invade. Raya looks out, and her stomach drops. The entire population of Spine has been turned to stone. Tong quietly explains he's the only one left. He survived the Drin attack, but everyone else was lost. Realizing what's coming, Raya tells her friends to run while she stays behind to stall Namari. Before they go, Raya turns to Tong and does something she almost never does anymore. She trusts him. She asks Tong to guide her friends out through another exit and gives him her vote of confidence. Raya finally steps forward and opens the gates, facing Namari head-on. The tension snaps into violence almost instantly. Raya draws her father's sword and fights with everything she has. Quick strikes, sharp counters, and just enough precision to knock Namari's weapon away. For a second, it looks like Raya might actually win, but Namari recovers fast. Raya is thrown off balance and hits the ground hard. She forces herself back up, switching to close combat, trading punches and grapples with her rival. The fight turns brutal, and this time, Raya loses. Seeing Raya about to be overwhelmed, Sisu can't stay hidden anymore. She returns and unleashes her mist power, flooding the area with thick fog that blinds Namari's soldiers and breaks their advantage. Then the dragon steps forward, revealing herself fully. Namari freezes. The sight of Sisu, alive, hits her like a wave. Her expression shifts from aggression to disbelief, and for a moment she can't even speak. Raya takes that brief opening and escapes with her team. Now that Bound, Noi, the monkeys, and Tong have seen the truth, they stop treating this like a personal mission. It becomes their mission too. They agree to help Raya restore the world. Tong offers up his shard of the dragon gem, and when Sisu touches it, she gains another power, rain magic, once belonging to one of her dragon siblings. She plays with it at first, forming falling droplets into a strange ladder-like path in the air, climbing upward like a child testing a new toy before tumbling right back into the water. Later, Sisu carries Raya high above the land to show her something important. The world as it used to be. From above, Raya spots what she's been avoiding for years. Her father's stone statue, standing silent like a monument to everything that went wrong. Before Raya can fully process it, Sisu brings her to the very mountain where the dragon gem was once protected. This is where history broke. Sisu shows her the stone forms of the dragons, her siblings, heroes frozen in time. She explains that in the final battle long ago, the dragons fought the Druin until there was almost nothing left. One last attempt was made, The dragons combined their abilities into a single magical sphere, the object humans would later call the Dragon Gem. Then they chose Sisu to carry it. Sisu admits she never fully understood why she was picked. But what mattered wasn't the reason, it was the trust. Her siblings believed in her completely. And because they believed, she believed too. That faith made her stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, strong enough to drive the Drun away. After telling Raya this, Sisu asks her to consider the hardest thing of all. Maybe trusting Namaari again is the key. With every shard collected except the final one, the group's last destination is clear: Fang. Back in Fang, Namaari reports to her mother, Varana, and reveals what she saw. The dragon is real. Sisu is alive, and with the gem restored, everything could be fixed. But Varana isn't relieved, she's calculating. She argues that if the world returns to normal, Fang could become the target of everyone's anger. The other realms will blame them, punish them, maybe even destroy them. Varana tells Namaari to stay composed, because she already has a plan. That night, Raya decides to try Sisu's way. She sends Noi and the monkeys with a package for Namaari. The dragon necklace Namaari once gave her, along with a note, an olive branch, a signal that Raya is willing to talk. While the crew eats dinner aboard the boat, they spot Namaari's signal and follow it. Namaari appears, and to Raya's surprise, she hands over the final shard. For a brief moment, it feels like the impossible is happening. Sisu steps forward, ready to unite the pieces and bring everyone back. But then the truth snaps into place. It's another trap. Namaari raises a crossbow and orders Raya to hand over every shard. Sisu tries to speak to her gently, appealing to the part of Namaari that once believed in legends and dragons. Raya sees the tension in Namaari's hands, the split second before she fires. Raya lunges to stop it. The bolt releases anyway, and it hits Sisu. The dragon takes the shot in the chest and collapses into the water. Namaari grabs her shard and flees. And in that instant, everything changes. The protective waters around Fang begin to fail, fading away like the world itself is losing breath. Without the last dragon, humanity loses its strongest shield. The Drun close in on the kingdom, rolling forward like a living nightmare. Raya, furious and shattered, chases Namaari into the palace. Inside, the situation is already collapsing, literally. Varana has been turned to stone, and Namaari's world has just crumbled. The two girls duel again, blades flashing as the palace shakes around them. Outside, Raya's friends use the remaining shards to defend civilians and keep the Drun back. But Raya can't see any of that clearly, not at first. Her anger is too loud. She finally disarms Namaari, pinning her in a moment where one choice could define everything. Raya could end it, but she hesitates. She looks past Namaari and sees her friends fighting to save strangers, people they don't know, people who might never repay them. That pulls Raya back from the edge. She turns away from revenge and rejoins her team. As they try to escape, the Drun swarm tuk-tuk. The creature is trapped, and then Namaari saves him. It's sudden, risky, and real. But even that isn't enough. The ground splits beneath them, and the Drun close in from all sides, boxing them into the ruins. Raya clutches Sisu's necklace and remembers Sisu's words. What truly saved the world the first time wasn't just magic. It was trust. Sisu trusted her siblings, and they trusted her back. That belief became power. So Raya makes a choice no one expects. She tells her friends that the only way to fix this is to trust each other completely, starting with trusting Namaari. The others protest. After everything Namaari has done, how could they possibly? Raya doesn't argue. She simply takes the first step. She places her shard into Namaari's hands, accepting whatever happens next. One by one, her friends follow. Bound, Tong, Noi, even the monkeys. They surrender their shards, choosing faith over fear. And as they do, they turn to stone, each of them falling silent, trusting Raya's decision with their lives. Namaari stares at the shards in her hands. She sees a way out, an escape route where she could save herself. For a moment, she almost takes it, but she stops. Instead, She stays and begins reassembling the dragon gem. At first, nothing happens. The magic feels dead. The gem doesn't respond. Then Amari kneels beside Raya, and she turns to stone too. And then the world holds its breath. The drone frees. The gem begins to glow again, as if the trust given freely has reawakened it. The light expands outward in a wave, wiping the drone away completely. The curse reverses. People return from stone to flesh across every realm. And this time, the dragons return too. Water surges back into fountains and rivers. Life rushes into dry places like the world is healing its scars. Raya finds Tuk Tuk again in the hills, alive and rolling toward her like nothing matters more. Dragons streak across the sky, painting it with color and motion. They gather at the lake and perform a ritual that restores Sisu fully. She rises again, reunited with her siblings, then swims toward Raya to thank her. Namari and the rest of the crew stand nearby, and Sisu pulls them into a warm embrace, as if she's sealing the new future with one simple act: unity. Soon, everyone gets what they've been fighting for. Tong is reunited with his family. Noi returns to her parents. Fang finally has his loved ones back. Across the land, families cry, laugh, and hold each other like they're afraid it's a dream. Raya and Tuk Tuk return apart. And at last, Raya sees her father again, restored, alive, and looking at her with the same pride he had before everything fell apart. Sisu appears beside him and smiles, telling Benja that Raya didn't come back alone. And then, one by one, the leaders and people from every realm arrive, standing together at last. The 5 kingdoms gather not as enemies, but as one. Commandra is reborn. Raya and the Last Dragon is, without question, a gorgeous movie to look at. The animation is polished, detailed, and packed with color. Every frame feels carefully crafted. And on paper, the central idea is genuinely strong. A fantasy world built on fractured trust, where unity isn't just a message tacked on at the end, but the entire problem the story has to solve. The film takes place in Commandra, a land that once lived in balance with dragons. Long ago, a dark force swept in, spirits that drained the land and turned people into stone. The dragons made a final sacrifice to stop the threat, leaving behind a powerful gem that kept everyone safe. But peace didn't last. Instead of coming together, the human world splintered into 5 rival regions, each guarded, suspicious, and convinced the others can't be trusted. We meet Raya, a warrior princess from Heart, raised to protect the gem. Her father dreams of rebuilding unity between the clans and believes that trust can be restored. That hope is tested quickly when tensions boil over, especially with Fang, the most intimidating faction, and the gem is shattered. Namari and the rest of the crew stand nearby, and Sisu pulls them into a warm embrace, as if she's sealing the new future with one simple act: unity. Soon, everyone gets what they've been fighting for. Tong is reunited with his family. Noi returns to her parents. Fang finally has his loved ones back. Across the land, families cry, laugh, and hold each other like they're afraid it's a dream. Raya and Tuk Tuk return apart. And at last, Raya sees her father again, restored, alive, and looking at her with the same pride he had before everything fell apart. Sisu appears beside him and smiles, telling Benja that Raya didn't come back alone. And then, one by one, the leaders and people from every realm arrive, standing together at last. The 5 kingdoms gather not as enemies, but as one. Commandra is reborn. Raya and the Last Dragon is, without question, a gorgeous movie to look at. The animation is polished, detailed, and packed with color. Every frame feels carefully crafted. And on paper, the central idea is genuinely strong. A fantasy world built on fractured trust, where unity isn't just a message tacked on at the end, but the entire problem the story has to solve. The film takes place in Commandra, a land that once lived in balance with dragons. Long ago, a dark force swept in, spirits that drained the land and turned people into stone. The dragons made a final sacrifice to stop the threat, leaving behind a powerful gem that kept everyone safe. But peace didn't last. Instead of coming together, the human world splintered into 5 rival regions, each guarded, suspicious, and convinced the others can't be trusted. We meet Raya, a warrior princess from Heart, raised to protect the gem. Her father dreams of rebuilding unity between the clans and believes that trust can be restored. That hope is tested quickly when tensions boil over, especially with Fang, the most intimidating faction, and the gem is shattered. The catastrophe that follows brings the danger back, and suddenly everyone is fighting to survive instead of fighting each other. Though, of course, old grudges don't disappear overnight. Years later, Raya is still carrying the weight of what happened, and her mission becomes bigger than revenge or survival. She sets out to find Sisu, the last dragon, hoping there's still a way to undo the damage. Together, they begin tracking down the pieces of the broken gem and trying, against all odds, to get the divided world to cooperate again. That basic plot, I actually liked it. The world building is imaginative, the action is smoothly animated and exciting, and the message about rebuilding trust fits the story naturally. There's also a cultural inspiration throughout, Southeast Asian influences, that gives the film a distinct identity, and it generally feels respectful rather than cartoonish or shallow. Where the movie lost me a little was in the supporting cast and the overall shape of the storytelling. A few side characters come across as more goofy than charming, and some choices feel less like organic character behavior and more like the script pushing people into place so the next scene can happen. One character in particular, the baby, was more distracting than funny to me, and the humor in general didn't always land. Instead of feeling clever, it sometimes felt forced or oddly modern in a way that didn't match the tone of the world. Another issue is that the story plays it safe. Even when the setup is dramatic, the film doesn't take many big narrative swings. A lot of moments are easy to predict, and by the time the final act arrives, the pacing starts to feel crowded. The ending has a few emotional beats that should hit hard, but it moves so quickly that it can feel rushed rather than earned. That said, there's still plenty to admire. The visuals do most of the heavy lifting in the best way. Vibrant landscapes, expressive animation, and action sequences that look fantastic. The music also deserves credit. James Newton Howard's score mixes sweeping emotion with energetic rhythms and subtle regional flavor. And the voice cast is solid. Kelly Marie Tran makes Raya immediately likable and believable, and Gemma Chan gives Namari a sharp edge that works well for the character. So overall, I'm kind of split. I wanted to love this more than I did, and I can understand why some viewers walked away disappointed. Still, even with the flaws, uneven humor, predictable beats, and a few annoying character choices, it's a visually impressive adventure with a meaningful core. Not top-tier Disney for me, but definitely not a waste of time either. When the Druin are unleashed again, the world basically collapses into a ruined, fearful version of what it once was. 6 years pass, and Raya is still out there, moving through a broken landscape, chasing one goal: find the last dragon and bring back a future that isn't made of dust and stone. At its core, this is classic modern Disney princess territory. Disney takes inspiration from real-world cultures with an exotic adventure vibe, builds a fantasy world around it, and drops a young heroine into a quest that's meant to be emotional, funny, and uplifting. And honestly, they're good at this formula. The movie has a warm message underneath all the action: trust, unity, and the idea that people can rebuild something together, even after everything falls apart. That said, how much you enjoy the movie might depend on how you feel about Awkwafina. Because for me, Awkwafina as Sisu is complicated. I don't think she's bad, but she sounds like Awkwafina being Awkwafina. Same vibe, same rhythm, same voice you've heard in a bunch of other roles. It didn't feel like a dragon voice, or even a cartoon character voice. It felt like a celebrity voice drop in, and that pulled me out of the world more than once. Personally, I kept imagining different casting choices. I could see Sisu working better with a more gentle, innocent energy, Maybe even a younger-sounding voice like someone who feels pure and wide-eyed instead of snarky. Awkwafina could still fit the movie perfectly, just not necessarily as the dragon. Put her into the team instead. One of the companions who joins Raya along the way, and she'd probably shine without hijacking the fantasy tone. And while we're at it, the shrimp boat captain, that character could have been hilarious as a dry, sarcastic older woman. Same jokes, same attitude, just a different flavor. Small casting shifts like that would have made the character lineup feel fresher. Story-wise, Disney packs a lot into a short runtime. We've got a land that used to be united, dragons that once protected it, a magical artifact that gets shattered into pieces, and multiple regions with rulers who don't trust each other. Raya's father gets turned to stone, and the mission becomes a full hero's journey. Reunite the pieces, bring back the dragons, restore the world, and deal with the betrayal that broke everything in the first place. Especially the rivalry with the other princess-like figure who helped set the disaster in motion. At times, the mythology feels like it's moving fast. Almost like the film is trying to teach you its entire world Bible, while also keeping the story upbeat and kid-friendly. It can be a lot, and the tone occasionally swings between perky Disney comedy and post-apocalyptic seriousness pretty quickly. But once Sisu enters the story, the movie finds its groove. Even with my issues with the voice, the character helps the film loosen up and the emotional beats start landing better. The movie never stops being intentionally simple and sincere. This is Disney, after all, but the craftsmanship is obvious. The pacing, the visuals, the action choreography, the sentiment, it's built by people who know exactly how to push the right buttons. And yes, it absolutely has those moments that sneak up on you and make you tear up a little. One thing worth mentioning is how the film presents its world and characters. Even though it's an English-language American production, the setting and character design are clearly rooted in Asian influences. The cast reflects that too, with major voice roles filled by Asian and Asian American actors. You can tell a lot of care went into making the world feel distinct from other dragon stories, especially compared to the more European fantasy look you might associate with other dragon franchises. These dragons are designed with a different energy, and it helps the movie feel like its own thing instead of a copy of something else. Ironically, for a movie with dragon in the title, dragons aren't constantly everywhere. The story revolves around them, but most of them are absent for a big chunk of the runtime, which makes Sisu carry the dragon presence almost alone. That puts even more pressure on whether you connect with her personality and voice. In the end, I wouldn't call this a perfect movie, and I wouldn't rank it as Disney's all-time best. But it is solid family entertainment. Fun, heartfelt, good-looking, and emotionally effective. Kids will love it, parents will probably enjoy it, and a lot of households are going to replay it until they're exhausted. So no, not a masterpiece, but definitely a good one. And for a modern Disney princess adventure, it delivers exactly what you'd expect. The movie's central idea didn't completely land for me. The film insists that human wrongdoing is the main reason everything falls apart, but the way that message is delivered felt a little forced, almost like a lesson being pushed rather than something that naturally grows out of the story. I think it would have been more believable if the point was that people's behavior made the dragons stop defending them, instead of the movie framing it in such a blunt, simplified way. But fine, I can live with it. My bigger issue was the last dragon. I don't need some flawless, perfect fantasy creature, but the clumsy vibe didn't really work for me, and the way the dragon becomes human, or humanish, wasn't especially appealing either. Visually, I'll admit it looked decent, especially the hair and color choices, but the character concept itself didn't click. And then there's the ending. The movie shows the dragon being killed, only to reverse it a short time later with a big dramatic rescue. That whole sequence felt very manufactured, like the script was checking off boxes. The trust theme, learning to believe in each other, even someone who used to be an enemy, is totally fine on paper, but the shift from total disaster to a fully cheerful resolution happened way too quickly. The film had stronger material earlier on. The final chunk, roughly the last half hour or runtime, just over 100 minutes including credits, wasn't where it shined. What I did enjoy was the early setup. The main character getting outplayed near the beginning works, and you can already feel the bond forming between the two girls. Depending on how you read it, there's even a hint that their relationship might be more than just friendship. Animation stories leave that door open these days. There are also threads that could have led to something lighter, like a potential romance between the adults. Instead, the plot takes a much harsher direction and steers into collapse and tragedy. Even so, the supposed villain never felt truly evil to me. The main antagonist, who honestly gave me Asian Ariana DeBose energy with that hairstyle, comes across more like someone stuck inside a bigger bad situation than a pure monster. She tries to reason with her mother, and she clearly respects the dragons and is fascinated by them. There's one shot where she's half hidden in smoke, and her expression in that moment might be the single most striking image in the whole film. The supporting cast was a mixed bag, but generally okay. A few characters worked really well, a few didn't. The father figure felt extremely generic and, honestly, barely mattered. On the other hand, the armadillo companion was an absolute win. Easily one of the best parts of the movie, and I would gladly take one of those in real life. The sneaky baby con artist with monkey sidekicks was genuinely funny too. The little boy didn't do much for me and drifted into kind of annoying territory. The big tough warrior character, though, was surprisingly entertaining. He looks like a disaster waiting to happen, acts intimidating, but is clearly soft underneath. Him being willing to take in the baby at the end isn't even a twist. It matches what we've seen all along. From a moment the heroine basically calls him out for not even knowing what to do with his prisoners, you can tell he isn't as bad as he pretends. I actually wish the movie gave him more to do. Visually, the film is undeniably strong. That's almost expected from major studio animation now, but it still deserves credit. The polish is one reason it played so well with award circles. The Disney name probably didn't hurt either, with the Oscar nomination and the Annie attention, even if it didn't end up winning. The beauty is especially clear when the dragons are finally released and you see them soaring freely overhead. And notably, those dragons aren't chatterboxes. They just exist, quiet, powerful, majestic. I prefer that to the more talkative main dragon, who sometimes felt like the movie leaned on her dialogue too much. There's also a moment where the story basically piles all the responsibility onto that one dragon, handing her the power and the burden to save everyone. I didn't love that choice. It made me think, couldn't they have chosen someone else? Maybe they should have. One pattern that does stand out across the film is how often characters get tricked into trusting someone who seems kind. It happens right at the start with the two girls. It happens again when the heroine first deals with the baby. And it happens when the dragon girl interacts with the sweet-looking elderly woman. Over and over, it's friendliness as a mask. To be fair, not every betrayal stays a betrayal. Some of those mistakes eventually lead to genuine allies. But the true threat is really the same throughout. Those dark, creeping shadow creatures that swallow everything and leave stone behind. So overall, strong visuals, some great side characters, a few really beautiful shots, but a message that felt too designed. A main dragon I didn't connect with, and an ending that rushed hard into a neat happy bow when the story felt like it had earned something more layered. I was still hoping for a clearer rundown of who the threat really is and where it comes from, but it is what it is. Even without that extra context, the villains land well enough on pure spectacle and stakes, especially once the story reaches its big, eye-popping finale. And I like that the final win doesn't come for the title hero alone. It's her new ally who steps up, and Raya's willingness to trust, her stubborn belief that people can be better than their worst choices, ends up mattering just as much as any action beat. That part worked for me. That said, there's an earlier moment that had me raising an eyebrow, Raya blurting out that she has the dragon with her. I honestly expected her to be too sharp for that. Plus, I'm not convinced she fully grasped how obsessed the other girl is with dragons, even if Raya did notice that little symbol back when they were kids. It's a small writing hiccup, but it made Raya feel slightly less savvy than she generally comes across. Because for most of the film, she is portrayed as clever and tough. Right from the opening, she's pushing boundaries and stepping into places she absolutely shouldn't be, and that tells you a lot about her drive. The early scenes with her dad are genuinely sweet too. Though let's be real, the little armadillo-like buddy, tiny at the start, and yes, I also briefly misread it as something else, has a habit of stealing the spotlight whenever it shows up. Emotionally, the ending reunion with her father hit the hardest for me, especially after the movie makes a point of showing everyone else returning home and finding some peace first. The larger takeaway is obvious from pretty early on. Unity and trust are the only way to heal the land. The film never really tries to pretend otherwise, and you can feel the destination coming from miles away. Dragons restored, curses lifted, and the different groups with their body part-themed names, finally choosing harmony over fear. If I'm being picky, it's all a bit heavy-handed in the message department, and it can feel like it's trying very hard to resonate with the real world. But I can roll with that. Overall, I had a good time. The movie's strengths show up more often than its weaker moments, and it's also worth noting the runtime. With credits, it's closer to 2 hours than to a tight 90 minutes, so younger viewers and parents will need a little patience. Even with a slight dip toward the backstretch, I never really doubted where my verdict would land. Positive recommendation. It didn't completely sweep me away the way I wanted it to, but stayed fun, heartfelt, and consistently impressive to look at. If I had to compare the quality to something in the same lane, it's around the level of the good but not peak stretches of a certain popular Dragon franchise. Though that comparison isn't perfect here, since this story is much less Dragon-forward than the title suggests, and the visual style is its own thing entirely. Speaking of visuals, the CGI is a standout. The lighting, textures, and color work are gorgeous, and the world feels tangible without losing that animated charm. The movement is fluid, the environments pop, and it's the kind of movie where you'll catch yourself admiring the background details when you're supposed to be watching characters. The voice cast also does its job really well, exactly what an animated feature like this needs. The performances give the characters warmth and personality, and the humor lands more than it misses. There's even a specific hold-on gag that genuinely got me, and I'd bet most viewers will laugh at least a couple times. Bottom line, if you were curious about Raya and The Last Dragon, I'd say give it a go. It's an enjoyable watch with strong visuals, a likable lead duo, and a clear-hearted message, even if it occasionally trades subtlety for impact. And yes, I'd personally take it over Encanto. Going into Disney's Raya and The Last Dragon, I wasn't completely sure it would be my kind of movie. I remembered seeing the trailer months before everything shut down, and it looked like it could be a fun adventure. So I finally sat down to watch it with my 11-year-old son. Turns out, we both had a really good time. One of the first things that stood out to me was the voice cast. With so many Asian performers leading the lineup, the film felt like a meaningful step in representation. And honestly, it was great to hear Kelly Marie Tran in a major role again. She brings a lot of heart and intensity to Raya. Awkwafina, who voices Sisu, was a pleasant surprise for me. I wasn't familiar with her work beforehand, but she absolutely commits to the character and gives Sisu a playful energy without making her annoying. The setup, a broken world and a dangerous threat. The story takes place in a land called Commandra, once united, now fractured into 5 regions named after parts of a dragon: heart, Fang, spine, talon, and tail. Long ago, dark spirits called the Druins swept in and devastated everything, turning people into stone. The only thing that stopped them was dragon magic, stored in a gem that pushed the Druin back, but at a cost. Fast forward 500 years, and the gem is basically the last thing keeping the world from collapsing again. Raya, daughter of Chief Benja, is training to protect it. Her father believes the regions can reunite, so he invites leaders from the other lands to a feast in hopes of building peace. And this is where the movie's central idea kicks in: trust. Raya meets Namari, a young leader from Fang, and the two actually connect, at least for a moment. Raya lets her guard down, reveals the gem's location, and betrayal. A fight breaks out, the gem shatters into pieces, and that mistake immediately reawakens the Druin. Every tribe escapes with a fragment, and Heart is left to suffer. Raya's father sacrifices himself to save her, leaving Raya with one piece and a mission that becomes personal. The quest, Raider mode activated years later. Raya is older, tougher, and basically running on determination and grief. With her oddball armored sidekick Tuk Tuk, who is part rolling creature, part loyal pet, part living vehicle, she travels across Commandra hunting down the remaining gem shards. The vibe is very action-adventure scavenger hunt, and at times it almost feels like a family-friendly fantasy version of a treasure-raiding game. Eventually, Raya reaches tail and manages to summon the last dragon, Sisu. The twist is that Sisu isn't some all-powerful savior who single-handedly made the magic work. She explains that the gem's power was a shared effort between her and her siblings, meaning she can only become complete again by reconnecting with the pieces. It's a simple idea, but it fits the film's theme of unity. What works and what's complicated? Let's talk visuals. The CGI is seriously impressive. The environments, the lighting, the water effects. Disney clearly invested a lot in the look and feel of this world. It's one of those movies where even if the story doesn't blow you away, the animation keeps you watching. That said, I do have mixed feelings about the message. The film leans hard into the idea that trust is the key to healing the world, and that's a nice sentiment. But it gets tricky when the story asks the hero to keep trusting someone who repeatedly proves they can't be trusted. The movie wants that to feel noble, and sometimes it does, but other times it feels like it's rewarding betrayal a little too easily. Also, while the movie is inspired by Southeast Asian cultures, it doesn't always feel deeply rooted in them. The dialogue is full of modern slang, and the tone often feels closer to a modern Disney adventure than a fully immersive cultural fantasy. On top of that, a couple character design choices may raise eyebrows, depending on how you view Disney's history with stereotypes. It doesn't ruin the movie, but it's noticeable. The ending also gave me a familiar teamwork saves the day vibe that reminded me a bit of Guardians of the Galaxy, minus the dance battle. Final verdict, so where do I land? On the one hand, Raya and the Last Dragon has a strong lead, a cool world concept, and genuinely gorgeous animation. It's also refreshing to see a Disney heroine who isn't waiting around for anyone to rescue her. Raya is a fighter, a protector, and a character with real drive. On the other hand, the movie's big lesson about trust is a little questionable in how it's handled, and the cultural elements sometimes feel more like a surface layer influence than something fully baked into the storytelling. Still, as a family movie, it absolutely works. My son enjoyed it, I enjoyed it, and it's the kind of animated feature that offers enough action, humor, and heart to keep different age groups entertained. If you're only going to watch one animated movie from 2021, this is a solid pick. Rating: I'm giving Raya and the Last Dragon a strong 8 out of 10. I was closer to a 7 at first, but the animation quality and overall entertainment value pushed it up for me. Meanwhile, we jump ahead to a more hardened, openly hostile Namari, Gemma Chan, who's been roaming the fractured lands of Commandra with her fighters. She's still chasing one thing above all, the stolen image tied to Sisu, and, by extension, the scattered gem fragments that could restore balance. Raya and Sisu managed to secure the next shard inside Tail's treacherous temple, a place rigged with traps and haunted by the grim aftermath of its fallen leader. This fragment upgrades Sisu in a surprising way, granting her the ability to alter her appearance, most notably by taking on a human form. The tense reunion between Raya and Namari sparks instantly. The old wounds are clearly still fresh, and neither is willing to back down. Before the clash can turn deadly, Raya and Sisu slip away. Their escape leads them onto the boat of Baon, Isaac Wong, a young, optimistic restaurateur who's surviving on hustle and hope after losing his family to the Drun. He's friendly and eager to help, but Raya stays guarded. She's learned the hard way that charm doesn't always equal safety. To keep attention off them, she pushes Sisu to remain in her human disguise. Next stop, Talon, where the group hunts down another gem piece. Here, Raya crosses paths with Noi, Talia Tran, a tiny but fearless con baby running slick little schemes with her 3 mischievous Ongi companions, monkey-like partners who became her family after her mother was turned to stone. After a chaotic chase and a few clever plays, Noi and the Anjus end up joining the team. Things get uglier when Sisu meets Talon's leader, Dang Hu, Lucille Song, who chooses self-preservation over goodwill and attempts to trade Sisu to the Drune in exchange for the other gem pieces. Raya intervenes in time, rescuing Sisu and reclaiming the third fragment. This new piece gives Sisu another ability. She can release a heavy fog, which the group uses to vanish from danger. From there, they reach Spine, a harsh region where they meet Tong, Benedict Wong, a towering warrior and the village's last survivor. He's intimidating at first, but his loneliness and grief sit right beneath the armor. Trouble finds him again when Namari arrives. Raya holds her off in a fierce fight so the others can flee. Just as Namari is about to win, Sisu reveals her true dragon form and saves Raya, shifting the group's dynamic for good. Seeing Sisu for what she really is, the companions commit fully to the mission. Tong hands over Spine's shard, and Sisu gains control over Rain, an ability that feels both powerful and symbolic. As they near Fang, Sisu offers a different approach. Stop treating Namari like the enemy and try partnership instead of theft. Raya refuses at first, too burned by betrayal to gamble on trust. Sisu then takes her back to the ruined heart, showing her something deeply personal, the stone remains of her dragon siblings, Pangu, Juggin, Praini, and Amba. Sisu explains that what truly fueled her magic wasn't just power, but faith. Her siblings believed in her, and that belief made the impossible happen. It's a turning point for Raya. She finally decides to try peace, choosing to approach Namari with the dragon pendant as a sincere offering. Raya and Sisu meet Namari privately, but Namari is torn in half between protecting Fang's image and doing what's right to stop the Drune. When she sees the gem fragments, fear takes over and she raises her crossbow. Sisu tries to de-escalate, but in a heartbreaking chain reaction, Raya strikes at the weapon and the shot lands anyway. Sisu is killed. With the last dragon gone, the world feels the loss immediately. Water drains away, and Fang is swallowed by the Drune's spreading darkness. Grief turns into fury. Raya and Namari collide in a brutal fight, while Raya's companions scramble to rescue civilians using whatever remaining power they can pull from the incomplete gem. Raya eventually wins and nearly finishes Namari, but stops when she sees Namari shattered over her mother, now turned to stone. Raya finally accepts the painful truth. Sisu died because Raya couldn't trust anyone else enough to take the risk. So instead of revenge, Raya chooses responsibility. She and Namari join forces with the others, and as the Drune close in, Raya pushes everyone toward one final act: complete unity. One by one, they place their gem pieces together, then willingly sacrifice themselves, allowing the Drune to petrify them, to give the plan a chance. In the final moment, Raya hands her piece to Namari as proof of faith, letting herself turn to stone. Namari finishes assembling the gem and is petrified as well. That shared leap, everyone choosing trust at the end, triggers the gem's full power. A wave of light wipes out the Drune, reversing the damage. People return to life, dragons are restored, and Sisu is revived. The reunions hit hard and heartfelt, especially Raya finally embracing her father again. The tribes gather back at heart, no longer divided, and Commandra is whole once more. On the performance side, Tran is terrific as Raya, grounded, fierce, and emotionally believable. But Awkwafina as Sisu constantly grabs the spotlight with rapid-fire humor and a playful edge that keeps the film from getting too heavy. The animation is stunning, filled with rich textures, vibrant environments, and an ancient fantasy atmosphere packed with dragons, strange creatures, and sweeping landscapes. The story blends mythology with martial arts energy in a way that feels exciting, funny, and surprisingly moving. And James Newton Howard's score gives the adventure real lift, grand, urgent, and perfectly suited to a big-screen fantasy ride. Overall, it lands as a gorgeous, crowd-pleasing animated action-adventure. Fast, heartfelt, and driven by a central idea that actually sticks. Trust isn't easy, but it might be the only thing strong enough to rebuild a broken world. It earned major awards attention, landing an Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature and a Golden Globe nomination for Best Motion Picture. Animated, and honestly, it deserved to be in that conversation. Set in the rich fantasy realm of Commandra, the story imagines a world where humans and dragons once lived side by side on a dragon-shaped landmass. Peace didn't last. A sinister force known as the Drunes swept in, mindless, eerie spirits that turned both people and dragons into stone. In a final act of sacrifice, the dragons pooled their magic to create the Dragon Gem, driving the Drune away, but disappearing in the process. Fast forward 500 years, and Commandra is no longer united. It's fractured into 5 rival regions, each named after the part of the dragon they occupy. The gem is guarded in heart, but the other lands want it, some out of desperation, others out of distrust, and plenty out of ambition. When tensions boil over and the gem gets shattered, the Drune return, and the world begins to collapse again. Now, each land holds a piece of the gem, and restoring it means crossing borders where nobody wants to cooperate. That's where Raya comes in. She's the daughter of Heart's chief protector, and she's determined to gather every fragment, stop the Drune, and, more importantly, bring the divided world back together. On her journey, she discovers Sisu, the last surviving dragon, and the two set out on a mission that's as much about rebuilding trust as it is about collecting magical artifacts. Along the way, they pick up unexpected allies, clash with rivals who aren't exactly evil, and navigate a world where every nation looks out for itself first. What really works here is the tone. It's adventurous, emotional, and surprisingly thoughtful for a family film. The plot itself is fairly straightforward, perfect for younger viewers, yet the themes land strongly: trust, unity, and the cost of suspicion. The villains aren't cartoonishly wicked, either. Even the opposing characters feel more like products of their environment than pure bad guys, which adds a nice layer of nuance. The Drune, meanwhile, are a great force of nature, threat, spooky and intense, but generally not so terrifying that most kids can't handle it. There's a moment near the end that might hit sensitive viewers a bit hard, but it doesn't linger, and the film makes it clear it's heading toward a hopeful resolution. Visually, it's a feast. The animation is so polished that at times it's easy to forget you're watching something animated at all, especially in the action sequences and close-up character moments. The facial expressions, lighting, and movement are exceptionally detailed. It's also impressive knowing the production pulled together huge collaboration during the pandemic, with artists working remotely and still delivering such cohesive quality. The world design deserves a shout-out too. Commandra has a distinct Southeast/East Asian-inspired aesthetic, from architecture and clothing to landscapes and creature designs. It feels intentional, immersive, and different from the usual fantasy templates. Also worth noting, while many Disney releases lean musical, this one doesn't, so don't expect characters to burst into songs. If I had one gripe, it's that Sisu may not work for everyone. The character is meant to be comedic and light, but depending on your taste, the humor can feel a bit too chatty or distracting at times. I didn't completely hate the approach, but I can see why some viewers would call the dragon the most annoying part of the movie. Compared to the very top-tier Disney hits, it might not reach instant classic status. It doesn't quite have that unforgettable magic of something like Moana, but it's still an entertaining, heartfelt adventure with gorgeous animation and a message that actually matters. Disney's recent push to bring more of the world's cultures and more kinds of people and lived experiences into the spotlight deserves real credit. Still, it's hard not to feel that praise comes with an asterisk. When a company this massive tells stories inspired by marginalized communities, its sheer dominance can unintentionally drown out smaller creators who deserve the platform in their own names, not just as representation inside a corporate brand. That tension is worth keeping in mind, even when the artistry on display is genuinely top tier. All of that said, it's also tough to argue with what's right in front of you. Raya and the Last Dragon is a vibrant, high-energy fantasy adventure that earns much of the excitement surrounding it. It isn't flawless, but it's absolutely an enjoyable ride, one that feels worth the effort to seek out. One of the most meaningful evolutions in Disney's modern era has been its gradual move away from the classic princess waits to be rescued model and toward leads who actively shape their futures. Raya fits neatly into that better tradition. She's capable, determined, and defined by her choices rather than her helplessness. Paired with that is Disney's ongoing attempt to reflect specific regions and cultural textures on screen. Even when those influences are blended together into something broad rather than perfectly pinpointed, the intention still lands. The film clearly wants to celebrate a Southeast Asia inspired world and populate it with characters and voices that align with that inspiration. On a purely technical level, the animation is outstanding, the kind of work that reminds you why big-budget animation can feel like a visual feast. The environments are packed with detail, from architecture and terrain to costume touches and creature design, and the movie has an easy confidence in showing them off. Action sequences are especially sharp, fluid, readable, and staged with a sense of impact and momentum. If this had been a live-action production, you'd be talking about stunt work and fight choreography as major highlights, because the animated camera and movement here have that same disciplined precision. The story, built by a large writing team, leans into familiar fantasy ideas: broken lands, ancient forces, a quest shaped by loss and hope, and it doesn't pretend it's reinventing every wheel. But it also doesn't need to. The movie's strength is how effectively it uses those recognizable ingredients to deliver a narrative that's engaging, heartfelt, and consistently entertaining. The tone is carefully managed. Humor pops up often enough to keep things light, but it never erases the stakes. There's real darkness in the background and real emotion driving the characters. Yet the film keeps moving with a sense of fun and forward momentum. A huge part of that momentum comes from the score, which lifts scenes with sweeping energy and adds texture during quieter moments. The music feels like it's trying to complement the film's cultural inspirations rather than simply decorate the action, and it helps the whole experience feel more immersive and mythic. And the voice cast across the board is terrific. Rather than one performance carrying everyone else, the ensemble works like a well-balanced team. Serious where it needs to be, playful when it can be, and believable in the emotional turns. Even the smaller roles and comedic beats land cleanly, and the loyal companion element adds charm without becoming a distraction. If there's a drawback, it's that the pacing can occasionally feel a bit hurried. Certain emotional beats arrive, hit, and move on before they've had the full space to settle. A few moments would likely have benefited from an extra breath or two, letting scenes unfold more naturally. But in the bigger picture, those bumps are minor compared to how much the movie gets right. In the end, Raya and the Last Dragon feels like a strong snapshot of where Disney is right now. Ambitious, visually dazzling, more culturally aware than it used to be, while still existing inside the complicated reality of a giant corporation shaping what global storytelling looks like. It's not perfect, but it's sincerely made, richly entertaining, and powered by craft that's hard not to admire. I had pretty high hopes going into Raya and The Last Dragon, and somehow it still managed to exceed them. No, it doesn't reinvent the family animation playbook. If you've watched enough big animated releases over the last decade or two, you'll recognize the familiar beats. But what surprised me was how well it executes those beats. It's consistently entertaining, more emotionally gripping than I expected, and it kept pulling me along even when I thought I'd already guessed the next turn. If you're not into this kind of genre at all, it won't convert you. But if you enjoy adventurous, heart-forward animated films, this one is absolutely worth your time. 2 thumbs up for me. The setup is classic Disney World epic, but with a strong hook. Long ago, dragons protected the land of Commandra from the Tran, a creeping, sinister force that reduces people to stone. When the dragons sacrifice themselves in a final stand, their remaining power is sealed into a magical gem. What should have preserved peace ends up doing the opposite. The nation splinters into 5 rival regions, each distrustful of the others. Chief Benja, guardian of the gem in the Land of Heart, dreams of putting the pieces back together, literally and politically, but a betrayal shatters the gem, scatters its fragments, and unleashes the Drun again. Years later, the burden falls on Raya, Binge's daughter, now hardened by loss and living in a world where suspicion is survival. Her mission is straightforward but dangerous. Recover the gem pieces across a broken landscape, outrun the Drun, and deal with enemies who are just as human as they are hostile. The twist is that she's not entirely alone. She eventually teams up with Sisu, the last dragon, sweet, oddball, and unexpectedly funny, whose energy lightens the story without draining it of stakes. This film also feels like one of those releases that didn't get its full cultural moment because of the pandemic-era shuffle, so catching up with it now almost feels like finding a hidden gem Disney slipped into the world. Story-wise, it's solid and engaging rather than wildly original, and it leans into Disney's modern habit of adding adorable animal companions. Though, to the movie's credit, the sidekicks aren't just there for factor. They actually serve the plot. One thing I noticed is the voice work. The cast includes many performers of Asian heritage, which fits the film's inspirations, but the voice direction is very contemporary, mostly modern American delivery, so it doesn't lean on accents or old-school exotic stylings. Whether that a positive choice or a missed opportunity is personal taste, but it keeps the dialogue easy and natural. Visually, though, absolutely stunning. The movie is packed with lush environments, atmospheric lighting, and beautifully designed locations that feel distinct across the different regions. Some early moments can look a bit flat compared to the best of modern animation, but once the story opens up, and especially once the dragon magic becomes a bigger presence, the visuals really sing. The score also does a lot of heavy lifting. It supports the emotional swings well, and the sound design helps make the action sequences punchy and cinematic. Speaking of action, it's enjoyable and well-staged, even if it doesn't always feel groundbreaking. The real power here isn't in trying to outdo every other animated fight scene. It's in how the movie anchors everything in its core idea. Trust. Trust between strangers, trust between former friends, trust after betrayal, and the terrifying risk of making the first move. That theme is handled with sincerity, and it lands. There are moments that genuinely tug at you, not because the plot is unpredictable, but because the emotion is earned. For Disney Animation, this feels like a strong reminder of what the studio can do when it's firing on all cylinders. An adventurous fantasy with heart, a clean message that doesn't feel preachy, and craftsmanship that's easy to admire. It's simple, yes, and you'll likely predict several turns, but the journey is so enjoyable that spoiling details would do more harm than good. Bottom line, Raya and the Last Dragon is a gorgeous, heartfelt, crowd-pleasing adventure that's better than it needs to be. If you like animated fantasy with emotional weight and a hopeful center, you should check it out. Overall, it's still a must-watch for families. Disney delivered one of 2021's most visually polished animated adventures, and it's easy to see why so many people recommend Raya and the Last Dragon. That said, the movie has a weird emotional rhythm. The humor and the heavier drama don't always blend smoothly. Sometimes they bump into each other instead of working as one. The opening also plays things fairly straight, and there's a serious tension that hangs around even when the film tries to be light. On top of that, the pacing can feel oddly game-like, almost as if the story was structured in levels and then squeezed into a 2-hour runtime. It's not a deal-breaker, but can make the film feel slightly uneven. What makes those issues more noticeable is that the movie absolutely has moments where it shines. When it's good, it's really good, especially in its world building and action. The animation is gorgeous, full of detail and movement, and knowing it was largely completed remotely during COVID-era production makes it even more impressive. The fight choreography is another standout. It has real weight and clarity, borrowing the feel of martial arts cinema while staying family-friendly. Story-wise, it's built around familiar Disney ingredients: loss, trust, teamwork, and sacrifice. The setting, Commandra, split into rival regions, creates a strong foundation, and the quest structure is easy to follow. Raya searches for Sisu and works to reunite the broken gem pieces to stop the Drun and undo the devastation they caused. The voice work is solid across the board, and the film's cultural inspirations create a distinct aesthetic, though it keeps things broad rather than tying itself to one specific real-world tradition. What the film may disappoint some viewers is in originality and structure. The travel to different locations, collect key items, gain new allies, progression can start to resemble a role-playing fetch quest. And without spoiling anything, a few choices in the finale may feel familiar if you've seen a lot of Disney storytelling before. So what does that leave it? A fun, high-quality adventure that looks and sounds fantastic, with some genuinely great sequences, but also one that can feel formulaic and occasionally frustrating. For kids, it's likely to be a favorite. For older viewers hoping for a story with a fresh punch on the level of Disney's most beloved classics, it may land more in the good, enjoyable, but not unforgettable category. Raya and The Last Dragon is one of those movies that looks incredible on the surface, but the deeper you go, the more it starts to fall apart. Visually, it's a feast. The animation is polished, detailed, and genuinely stunning. The landscapes, the character designs, and the action sequences all show Disney at its technical best. And at first, it feels like the movie is aiming for something slightly older. A journey story with big stakes, culture-rich world-building, and an adventure tone that could have worked well for a mature audience. But then the humor kicks in, and it doesn't stop. A lot of the comedy is loud, childish, and constant, and it ends up flattening the tone. Instead of balancing emotion and fun, the jokes often interrupt the tension, making the whole thing feel more like a kid's cartoon than an epic adventure. If that's the target audience, fine, younger viewers might not care. But if you're hoping for a more grounded adventure, the silliness becomes exhausting. The biggest problem, though, is Sisu, the Last Dragon. She's presented as this legendary world-saving figure, but her personality is written like an over-caffeinated side character. The voice performance leans heavily into quirky, and the dialogue is full of modern, throwaway lines that don't match the setting or the mood. Instead of being charming, she comes off as irritating, and the film spends so much time with her that it becomes hard to ignore. For a character who's supposed to feel magical and important, she often feels clueless, and her presence undercuts the seriousness of the story. Then there's the issue of the film's conflict. It's weirdly unclear who we're meant to see as the main villain, or even who the true hero is. Is the threat the Tran? Is it Namaari? Is it both? The movie can't seem to commit. And when it comes to the protagonist, you'd assume it's Raya. Her name is in the title. Yet the story doesn't always treat her like the one driving the resolution. At times the movie leans towards Sisu as the key figure, and at other moments it feels like Namaari is being framed as something in between, rival, villain, potential ally, maybe even co-lead. Her character swings so much that you're left wondering what the movie actually wants you to think about her. On top of that, the plot often relies on decisions that just don't make sense. One of the most baffling moments is early on, when Raya meets Namaari and, incredibly quickly, leads her to one of the most protected, most valuable objects in the entire kingdom. The movie treats this like a normal step in the story, but it's a huge leap that doesn't feel earned at all. Later, some of the choices made by both Namaari and Raya feel equally questionable. More than once I caught myself thinking, how do they know to do that? Why are they so sure this will work? A lot of the solutions arrive with shaky logic, as if the characters have secret information the audience never got. The movie wants you to accept outcomes based on emotion and messaging rather than believable cause and effect. And again, if you're a kid watching, you probably won't care. But for anyone looking for coherent storytelling, the uncertainty and gaps are distracting. Another thing that pulled me out of the film was how familiar some of the character types felt. The baby character gave off major boss baby energy, and the animal sidekicks and comedic beats reminded me of other animated franchises, including martial arts style side characters that felt very Kung Fu Panda-coded. There were enough "this feels like something I've seen before" moments that the movie didn't always feel fresh, even when the visuals were. To be fair, the film does have a strong central message: trust, unity, and healing divisions. That's a solid theme, and it's relevant. But the movie leans on it so heavily that it starts to feel like the script is repeatedly explaining the lesson instead of letting the audience experience it naturally. It borders on being spoon-fed. In the end, I wanted to love this more than I did. It has an interesting concept, a fractured land split into multiple regions, a magical gem meant to protect people, and a quest to reunite the pieces and restore everyone who has been turned to stone. It's also nice that it avoids the usual princess romance plus musical numbers formula and leans more into independence, family, and adventure. And yes, the cast is stacked with voices like Kelly Marie Tran, Awkwafina, and Chan. But despite all that, the movie never fully clicked for me. The animation is top tier and the premise is promising, yet the goofy humor, the shaky character motivation, and the messy villain/protagonist framing kept dragging it down. It's not terrible. Parts of it are genuinely enjoyable, but it didn't feel as original or as emotionally convincing as it wanted to be. If you're looking for a classic Disney fairy tale with songs and romance, you won't find it here. If you're watching for visuals and a simple moral about trust, you might have a good time. Personally, I just couldn't get fully invested. Raya and the Last Dragon is a Disney animated adventure that follows a young warrior, Raya, on a high-stakes mission to track down the Last Dragon and stop a dark threat from wiping out what's left of her world. The clock is ticking, and she isn't the only one searching. There are rivals and enemies chasing the same goal, which keeps the journey moving at a fast pace. The film is directed by Don Hall and Carlos Lopez Estrada, and while it clearly aims for epic fantasy storytelling, it also sticks closely to the classic Disney blueprint. You can feel the familiar story rhythm, a chosen hero, a fractured world, a quest with companions, emotional beats on cue, and the final message about unity and trust. It's polished and easy to watch, but it rarely surprises you. One of the movie's biggest strengths is how stunning it looks. The animation is absolutely top tier. Rich color palettes, sharp lighting, detailed environments, and smooth rendering make Commandra feel alive. In many scenes, the visuals alone do a lot of the heavy lifting. The soundtrack by James Newton Howard adds energy and emotion where needed, giving the film a cinematic push even when the story plays it safe. The voice cast is another highlight. Kelly Marie Tran gives Raya a serious, determined edge, and Awkwafina brings playful energy to Sisu, the Last Dragon. Their contrast works well and keeps the film from feeling too heavy. The supporting cast is also stacked. Daniel Day Kim voices Raya's father. Chan plays Raya's primary rival. Benedict Wong joins the journey as one of Raya's companions, and Sandra Oh appears as a key figure connected to Chan's character, along with additional voices like Ross Butler and Sung Kong that help round out the ensemble. That said, the storytelling has a few issues. The film introduces a whole mythology and world history, but it rushes through its own foundations. Instead of letting the world-building settle and breathe, it speeds ahead to the main plot. Because of that, the movie sometimes expects you to be emotionally invested in Raya's journey without spending enough time building the deeper weight behind it. A few characters stand out as interesting, but others feel more like standard archetypes, and some of the humor can come off forced. Like the movie is trying a little too hard to land jokes rather than letting them happen naturally. The emotional moments do hit, but they often don't stay long enough to fully settle before the film jumps to the next scene or action sequence. Overall, Raya and the Last Dragon is entertaining, well-made, and visually impressive. Most viewers will likely enjoy it, and it definitely delivers a fun adventure with a positive message. But if you're looking for a story that breaks new ground, this isn't quite that. Under the gorgeous animation and glossy presentation, it still feels like a familiar Disney recipe, pleasant, polished, and safe. From a creative standpoint, the animation and world design are the most memorable parts. From a storytelling perspective, it's more conventional than daring. Still, the film has enough heart and momentum to make it a good ride, even if it doesn't fully carve out a unique voice of its own. Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon looks like a major step forward on paper. A Southeast Asia-inspired fantasy world, a new heroine, and an adventure built around trust, unity, and healing old wounds. And in a lot of ways, it does deliver, especially when it comes to energy, atmosphere, and the film's overall sense of momentum. But while the movie is charming and easy to watch, it also feels like it's borrowing from familiar Disney templates so often that it struggles to fully stand on its own. The film takes place in Commandra, a land that once thrived because humans and dragons lived in harmony. Then a dark force, the Tran, arrives, spreading destruction and turning people to stone. The dragons pool their magic into a powerful gem, and one dragon, Sisu, uses it to stop the catastrophe, disappearing in the process. Whether she's gone forever or still out there becomes the kind of legend that keeps people hoping. At the beginning, the dragon gem is protected by Raya's people, led by her father Benja, who dreams of reuniting the fractured clans. But that dream collapses when mistrust flares, the gem is stolen, and it's shattered into pieces, splintering the land even further. Years later, Raya sets out to track down the fragments and restore what was lost. Raya is the engine of the story. She's capable, focused, and emotionally driven by duty, family duty, national duty, and the burden of her father's ideals. She's not a passive hero waiting for destiny to tap her on the shoulder. She's constantly making choices and pushing the plot forward. That said, the film's female-led positioning doesn't always land cleanly. Raya is written with seriousness and intensity, but the movie sometimes doesn't give her the space to be as magnetic as she needs to be. She's doing the heavy lifting, yet the script often hands the most playful charm to the characters around her, especially Sisu and even Raya's animal companion, Tuk Tuk. The result is that Raya can feel a bit overshadowed in her own movie, which is frustrating because the foundation of her character is strong. Sisu, voiced by Awkwafina, brings a deliberately goofy, loose-limbed energy to the story. And honestly, the Raya-Sisu pairing is one of the film's biggest strengths. Their chemistry works because it's not trying too hard to wink at the audience. The humor is light and friendly, and it doesn't slide into that self-satisfied, this joke is for the grown-ups tone that some modern animated movies lean on. Kelly Marie Tran gives Raya a grounded toughness that plays well against Sisu's chaotic optimism. They bounce off each other like mismatched partners, one operating on caution, the other running on faith. And that contrast keeps the adventure moving even when the story leans into familiar beats. Along the quest, the film builds a memorable squad. There's Baun, the upbeat young entrepreneur running a boat restaurant, Tong, a towering fighter with a surprisingly gentle presence, and a scene-stealing child con artist who weaponizes cuteness like it's a professional skill. Each of these characters has been affected by Commandra's collapse, and as a group, they give the film personality and warmth. This is where the movie really starts to feel like an old-school journey story, like a classic collect-the-pieces adventure, with a string of encounters that keep shifting the tone and scenery. There's even a pulpy, cinematic vibe at times that echoes big adventure storytelling. Think treasure hunt energy, while also nodding to animated epics that treat mythology seriously. Then, there's Namari, the princess pursuing the gem for her clan's power. She's